So Jordan Peterson was talking, this is a good warm-up, was talking to Gad Saad, and he asks Gad sincerely, because they're kind of talking about postmodernists. He says, is that what a postmodernist would believe? And it was just interesting for me in that moment to realize, I think both sides of any debate, and I don't know if this has always been the case in the world, but sort of imagine what they think someone would say. And sometimes they do it charitably, and sometimes they do it completely in bad faith. But it's so interesting how rare it is for someone, even on YouTube, to get the opportunity to speak to someone who disagrees with them in good faith as they both pursue truth and remain open to changing their perspectives. And when two sides do speak to one another, it almost inevitably turns into a shouting match and a debate.
Sure.
And you get mired down in gunk that is so obviously immaterial to the pursuit of the truth with a capital T, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or even when we do the opposite, which is when you speak, I think I just know you well enough that I assume everything you say is charitable. So I never assume that you're coming from a place of hate, because I know you don't. But then I don't ask you, oh, is that what a postmodernist would say? You just say it, and I go, interpret this as in the best possible way.
Yeah.
And then we carry on. So.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything from it. I was like, oh man, how nice would it be to have an actual postmodernist, instead of going, is that what they would say? And I when I've listened to Jordan Peterson, some people think that it isn't the case, that he misrepresents postmodernism. And I can see a handful of areas, but I also see him try to give credit where credit is due. And what he often says about postmodernism is that, you're right, there's not necessarily an objective framework on which I can say that one moral thing is better than another. But it seems clear that when it comes to building a bridge, we cannot compare different types of engineering only because one bridge stands and the other bridge doesn't.
What is postmodernism?
Oh boy. So I wish we had a postmodernist here to help. I'll do my best. It's a large body of work, which I'm going to overly simplify here. But the general idea behind it is, I think, relativism. And one of the things that it's applied to culture, it's sometimes applied to mathematics and language, but it's the idea that if I say Britney Spears sucks, and you're like, obviously Bach is better than her, that is a very subjective statement that if we dig down into it, doesn't stand on anything fundamental. And even if you say, well, Britney Spears writes in 4/4 time and uses only the same 3 notes, and Bach is much more complex.
Why is complex better?
Why is complex better? Why is this better? Why? It's basically, if you ask why, in my interpretation of it, if you ask why a million times, you get to an axiom which stands on nothing, which is, I think complexity is better. Or I think, for instance, even that bridges that stand are better. You know what I mean? Like, I think that mathematics that accurately predict the position of celestial bodies is better or more useful. But that's not to say that it is the case. So one of the stories that Gad tells about a postmodernist is how he was saying, well, isn't it true that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west? And she, I think, fairly to a degree responds, well, who says what's east and who says what's west? He says, well, over there. And she says, what do you mean over there? And I think what postmodernists accurately point out is that the way that we divvy up the world, like there's a water bottle here and I see it as separate from the table on which it stands, is based on survival.
Oh yeah, I even do. To say the sun rises is inaccurate. We rotate. Like,
exactly.
That's not fundamentally true. We rotate around the sun as it stays still. And
that's not even fundamentally true. So the point of the postmodernist is you can shift perspectives and see things very differently. If I were 1 trillion sizes larger than I am, separating this water bottle from this desk would make 0 sense and not be the way it was perceived. And if I was the size of a neutrino, treating this water bottle as a singular thing would make no sense.
What's the point?
The point is to say, holy cow, we often refer to objective truth. And so I say, like, you're schizophrenic and I'm not. And I go, you're seeing illusions. And their point is, I'm also seeing illusions, but they're just consensual. Not consensual. There's a high consensus around them. And so that's the point. Is so when we say, for instance, some of the things they point out is we talk about primitive societies and we talk about, right and wrong ways of doing things. So for instance, they point to cultural practices that we might look down on. I don't know if they necessarily often point to this one, but say like what we would call female genital mutilation. And they would go to judge that from your perspective. Obviously, you see it as bad. But if you shifted perspectives, the badness of it sort of can disappear.
Sure. Or it's weird to judge that, but then think that circumcision is completely normal. It's like, oh, that genital mutilation is bad, but this genital mutilation is good.
Eating cows is fine. If there's a Chinese person eating a dog or a rat, that's somehow weird or crazy. And so those are instances where it really stands out as obvious.
Is it a philosophy that's basic tenet is to minimize judgment?
I don't know what you could say it was for, and depending on who you talk about, this is what I think is valuable in it, is that it adds a degree of humility to any perspective, which I think is really valuable. And so what I think then comes out of it is you need to have hypothetical statements about the things that you say to be true. So it's like, look, if you're interested in what we agree is human flourishing, then you might not want to do genital mutilation.
Yeah, if you want a bridge that cars can drive across, you're going to want to go with consensus mathematics.
Yes. If you perceive this as a car and this as a bridge, and you know, which, come on, let's be real, bro. You do. We should do math this way.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that this math is right or true or has an objective claim that is beyond that.
It's definitely useful if you want to get across this river.
Yes. And that's the thing is like, I don't know how many postmodernists there are in torture chambers, you know, going like, well, my perspective says like suffering is real. Collapsing bridges are become very real when you're standing on them. So in any event, I wish I had a postmodernist here.
There's no such thing as genital mutilation works until somebody's mutilating your genitals. And then there is such a thing.
Exactly. So this is, I'm not criticizing Peterson and Gadd for it, but it's just unfortunate that it's so difficult to have open-minded conversations, because I'm sure that there's something that a postmodernist feels that they're misrepresenting. So another thing that this is applied to...
We have a bad debate culture, I feel like, on the internet, because changing your mind publicly is seen as a sign of weakness. You know, John Kerry flip-flopped. Sorry, you mean that after a decade plus of new information, I updated my mind to account for that? Like, I didn't just stick to what I thought in 1990? Yeah, that's a bad thing. And I think people see that. It's like, oh yeah, Ben Shapiro destroyed this kid because he had nothing to say. And instead he said, oh, that's a great point. I'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
Just like, what? This is how dialogue is supposed to occur. We update our information and then change our minds. So we have made that a weakness, I feel like. You're almost better off shifting goalposts, changing the topic. So that's what you see when you see Vosh and Destiny have a conversation. It's not occurring where anyone will change their mind, because to change your mind would be to admit defeat to the enemy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there might be times where they change their mind. But what I notice, and in myself, is if you start, your voice gets louder, one or both of you, not necessarily you, is probably starting to deviate from a pursuit of truth. If you find yourself having to shout. So just one other thing with postmodern, because I think this is one of the years where it first started, and I find it very credible, is in the artistic realms. It says, who says this art is good? Who says this art is bad? That's where you get the MoMA, is it the Modern Museum of Modern Art, has like a red thing, and Duchamp put up a urinal, and
I think the Mona Lisa sucks. I do. It's considered a classic. I went and saw it. It sucks.
Yeah.
Like you won't convince me otherwise.
And the point is, you're not wrong in that. Now, where Jordan Peterson and Gadd come in is they say, well, we have to agree that the brushstrokes have certain qualities to them. And a more postmodern approach would say, says who? Says who says what's a brushstroke? Who says that this is a lighter touch? And there's I think something fair to that perspective of total relativism. The problem is, and this is what James Lindsay criticizes, is they say, look, they tear everything down, which is like fair enough. And then where the woke, according to James Lindsay, his perspective is then what is the only thing that is left is power. So then the only thing that remain is power as historically wielded by groups of people. So then you have marginalized groups and unmarginalized, and these things are real. There's no blurry, I guess there are some blurry, because there's intersectionality, but it's what is real in the world are these power games. And the only thing that we can do is even the power game as it has been historically wielded. I think a fair point to this is, well, who tells the story of what history is and how groups clump together?
I don't know if it's postmodernism, but the philosophy that I don't agree with is this idea that if anyone is in a better position than someone else, they got there by taking advantage of that person. Because I feel like it doesn't allow for two people with free access to the gym and free access to food, but one just goes and works out every day and the other one chooses not to. And then in a year, that first person is significantly stronger than the second. It's like, was he stronger because he took advantage of the second person, or is he stronger because he went to the gym every day and ate right and the other person chose not to?
Sure.
And sometimes I think a power imbalance is caused by taking advantage of people. But it seems weird to say that any difference in strength or success or money or fame or whatever is only due to disadvantaging people and oppression. It just seems weird because you're not, like, surely we can think of examples where that's not the case.
Yes, I think that most postmodernists would agree with that statement. And then where you would disagree is on the particulars of where each one is happening in the world.
Well, funny enough, isn't the postmodern thing to say that, okay, well, let's say that movie stars have a massive amount of money relative to teachers, and that's bad. Well, the postmodernists, shouldn't they say, why do you think that's bad? Just because they have more money? Who's to say that having more money is inherently important?
Well, I think this is one of the difficulties of postmodernism, is that it is such a, it starts from such a skeptical place that it is tough to then construct off of that like airy edifice.
Yeah.
And so if you apply it to itself, it sort of does seem to eat its own tail, and there's perhaps an interesting way out of that problem. But yeah, I don't know, and I think the point that I started this was it'd be nice to talk to someone who's
I've never heard this term before, so
genuinely interested. Oh, you never heard of postmodernism?
No.
Oh my gosh, yeah, this is like all the rage. This is sort of what underpins a lot of Hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.